Welcome to Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. The only podcast where it's okay to talk in band. On this podcast, you will be able to hear conversations with some of the greatest names in wind band conducting, composing, and arranging. We'll also visit with great college, high school, middle school, and elementary band directors to get their thoughts on various aspects of being a band director. We'll have regular check-ins with instrument specialists, music dealers, and instrument repair professionals. And if that's not enough, we'll even have regular conversations with Dr. Tim, who will help keep us motivated. That's Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. And now, here's Charlie.
Welcome to Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends, and this our 18th podcast. We've got a great conversation lined up for you. And before we get to it, let me take a moment to thank our sponsors. The Eastman Musical Instruments Company, Vandercook College of Music, and Hal Leonard Corporation, publisher of the Essential Elements Method for Band. These are great people who are working very hard to provide you, the music education community, with great instruments, great classes, and great music and methods. Your support of them is very important, and I appreciate their support of Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. You know, every once in a while, you get lucky in life. And I was lucky in the spring of 1976 when I had the opportunity to student teach at Jefferson City, Missouri. Our guest was the director of bands there, and I learned so much in such a short time. He was a dynamo then, and he's a dynamo today. He's been retired for several years from his position as director of bands at Southwest Missouri State University in Springfield. But his drive and his passion and his energy is as strong today as it was his first year of teaching. You're going to hear from a gentleman who is not only a great teacher, but a man who loves kids and he loves people and he believes in music. He not only believes in music, he loves music, and he understands the power that music has over the human soul, the human condition, and how music can influence lives. This is a great conversation, and I know you're going to enjoy it. So get out a pencil and paper and take some notes, and enjoy our conversation with the retired director of bands at Southwest Missouri State in Springfield, Missouri, Jerry Hoover.
Today's podcast is made possible through the support of Hal Leonard, publisher of the Essential Elements Method for Band and the Essential Elements interactive website that is free for Essential Elements users. Essential Elements Interactive, or EEI, is a state-of-the-art, cloud-based support program that is constantly evolving to provide you and your students with more information and resources to help them learn and have fun while doing so. To learn more about EEI, visit EssentialElementsInteractive.com.
This is a crazy profession we're in, this band directing thing. And, you know, every once in a while, you come across somebody that has a profound influence on you and what you do and your beliefs and all the things you get to experience along the way. And I was a benefactor of getting to meet and getting to be a student teacher with our next guest. He is, if you're from the Missouri area or the middle of the country, this guy is a legend. He is the real deal, man. He is Mr. Jerry Hoover. Mr. Hoover, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Charlie.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
So you're in your what, third year of retirement now?
Fourth.
Your fourth year. Time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yeah, whether you are or not, it does, yeah.
So Jerry, how many years did you teach?
58.
You taught 58 years. Oh, my God. So take everybody through where you grew up and when you started playing and what instrument you started playing, where you went to college, and take us all the way to your first teaching job.
Well, stop me if it gets boring, all right?
Okay.
Grew up in Lamar, Missouri, and southwest part of the state. And 2 or 3 claims to fame. It's where our 33rd president, Truman, was born. And it also, the constable for a brief time was Wyatt Earp there. And little town of about 3,200 people at that time. And probably a typical small town experience. Good things. You had a bicycle, you get anywhere you wanted to go, and was going to go to I was going to go over to Pittsburgh State because it was just 20 miles across the state line to Kansas, and I was working for Lawn Boy Manufacturing out there airport that summer, and the company owned their own twin engine Cessna, and so I was helping the pilot one day. He was underneath it working on or something, and I had a group in high school called the Dipsy Doodle Five, and so these guys I worked with out there were all older, and they had a lot of fun. They called me Dipsy, and so they said, Dipsy, you got a guest, and I could see these white bucks walking toward the plane there. And it turned out he squatted down to visit with me under the plane. And it was a band director from Drury College, A.A. Rockwell, who turned out to be a very colorful figure. He had a colorful professional background of playing. He played with the King of Swing. What was that guy's name in the 20s? Played with his orchestra, and his roommate on the band was Lawrence Welk.
Wow. Then
he was with the RKO Hollywood Orchestra, and so he was a neat guy, and I really liked him. But he had a scholarship for me if I'd come to Drury, and so right there in the middle of summer, I'd say, okay, I'll go to Drury, scholarship, So that's where I started, and but and this is a sad thing now because a lot of this hasn't changed. Drury, I got a lot out of it, and he took me under his wing, and I thought a lot of him. And they had no marching band. They had no jazz band. They had no athletic band, pep bands. And if I had any of that, I had to do it myself. I would put together a pep band for the basketball games, and weekends we'd get together a big band. And I worked my way through college playing dances all over the country. But when I started teaching, I had very little background in any of that. So I told my students that I had in later years at Missouri State University, if they would take everything I was going to come at them with, they could hit the ground running 10 years ahead of where I was when I started. And so that, I had a brief time. I went over to KU because I loved Russell Wiley over there, and I wanted to get in a marching band. So I was over there for a while. It's the first time I ever heard the 22.5-inch step or 8-to-5, I never had any of that experience. So when I came out of Drury, my first teaching job was Kabul, Missouri, south central part of Missouri, a little town, 1,200 people, kind of unique. I don't know how much details you want because I can tell you stories like crazy, but I had 2 offers down there, Kabul, and the job was going to pay $4,100, and Willow Springs, 12 miles farther on, was opening up, and it was going to pay $4,800. So Betty and I talked it over, and we decided I should take the Willow Springs job, and so we left our child, which was Doug at the time, with my mother, and we took off and drove down to Kabul. And I went in, I talked to the superintendent, I thanked him for the offer, and I appreciate it, but I was going to take the job over at Willow Springs. So I got back in the car and we drove over to Willow Springs, and we pulled up. The superintendent of schools came running out frantically. He tried to catch me before we left Springfield to tell us that Joe Labuda, the band director, decided to stay. So now it seemed like Bay and I sat there for hours going, what on earth are we going to do? I just turned down the other job. And I finally got up nerve enough. We went back, and I went into the school office and I said, Mr. Ferguson, here's what's happened. If you still want me, I'm available. And so I ended up going to Kabul. That's how I went. Kabul was a little town of about 1,200 people. And while I was there, they extended the city limits and the population went up to 1,500. But now when you hear the teaching load I had, you're never going to believe it. You ready?
Oh, yep. Tell me.
Okay. All right. I had taught, and this superintendent had all the schedule arranged so you could do it schedule-wise. I had high school band, which had a lot of 7th and 8th graders in it. I had beginning band down in the elementary. I had the high school orchestra. Now stay with me on this. High school orchestra and the elementary orchestra. And I was starting beginning strings in the 4th grade every year, about 30 to 32 beginning strings in this little town. See, those things don't exist anymore. Then I had the Girls Glee Club. I had the mixed chorus. I had a 7th grade general music class. I had a 3rd grade, 1 day a week, music class over in the elementary. I had, what else? Oh, I had the drum and bugle corps. So did I get everything in there? I think.
Oh my God.
That was my teaching load.
And they made you drive the bus and cook breakfast, right?
Well, now that you mention it, I took the elementary orchestra, my 2nd or 3rd year there, over to play for the Houston kids. And they had an orchestra too. And I had to drive the school bus that day because they didn't have a driver. So I drove the school bus with my kids over to Houston to play over there. Yeah.
So what do you remember from those first days of teaching? What do you remember as the young
Well,
Jerry Hoover going in the classroom?
I think the first thing is you had so many balls in the air, you didn't have time to be too nervous. You had a schedule you were going at like crazy. And I knew for that elementary class that I didn't play piano, not well enough to do anything. And I didn't play guitar, but I was a pretty darn good ukulele player. So my first day over there at the elementary, I stood out in the hall till it was time to go in. And I thought, well, I need to get their attention. So I came roaring into the class, jumped in the air, landed flat-footed, and strummed my ukulele like a flamenco guitar, you know. So I had that class with me with no problem. Now the teacher was in shock. I think she had to go lay down in the faculty lounge or something. But it was a good experience. And I had started out in college to be an art major, so I still had a little bit of skills there. And we would listen to the Carnival of the Animals, and they would imagine they were different animals, and they'd shut their eyes, and I would draw colored chalk drawings on the board. And I loved that. I was fascinated by that 3rd grade, 8-year-old child, how they could receive and respond to things. No, I loved it. And now I never stopped to think that I had too much of a load. I didn't know what a load was. I just did all the classes they told me. And I got a little group started. I had a string quintet that we played a lot for civic clubs and events. And then I started a little group called the Strolling Strings. And I dressed the little girls in full-length dresses. And I had a good band parents organization. And so for the spring concert with all the large ensembles, we gave all of our concerts like that, the big ones in the gym. I thought, well, I really want to dress up my orchestra, and I found out I could order white dinner coats, used white dinner coats from some source out of New York. And I thought, that's it. So it was a good price, and the band parents said, yeah, we can afford that. So they shipped them in, and here came this big cardboard box with all these coats thrown into it. And the awfulest smoky smell you've ever smelled in your life. They had just guys had worked in those coats. They never cleaned them. They had cigarette burns in them. The parents went to work on those, and they got them to fit those kids. They got them cleaned up. Boy, at the spring concert, that orchestra looked like $1 million. I had the boys all in white dinner coats with bow ties, and the girls were all in bright colored dresses. So no, I loved every minute down there. And it was either the second or third year, I did away with the drum corps, and we started a marching band. And I inherited a band of about 40 members, and 3 years later, I think we had 45. But the difference was I only had 8 eighth graders in that band. And the band I inherited had about, 15, 16 seventh and eighth graders in it. So I was getting the band a little older as we went along. But that was Kabul, and it was a neat town. And yeah.
So when I met you, I was a student at Missouri, and Tim Lotzenheiser would have me drive him down to Jeff City, which seemed like every morning to watch you and the marching band. And then a year later, I had the opportunity.
You'd sit out there in the car asleep. You'd sit out there in the car asleep. I'd come run. I think they didn't make it today. I'd come running out with the band, and there you all were sitting in this car asleep. You'd gotten there early, and I don't know how early you got there.
We left Columbia at 5 o'clock in the morning to get there because Tim, he didn't want to ever be late. Yeah. So then I had a chance to student teach with you, but the Jeff City band program really had a unique structure. Tell people about how you structured that program.
Well, most schools I taught in, we started the beginning band the 5th grade. When I got to Jeff City, they didn't start till the 7th grade. But Al Lowe had been there in the middle school before I came, and he'd gotten a few changes made. And one was we had those beginners in like instrument classes, and we team taught. So at 7th grade level, you could take off and fly with them. And I think between the three of us, myself, King Schallenberg, and at that time Al Lowe, we were coming at it full steam ahead. Now the high school band rehearsed marching of a morning. Wasn't it 6 in the morning, Charlie?
6 or 7, 6:30 or 7, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't 7. Now I'll tell you, I had 9 years in Jeff City. I loved it. I loved everybody I dealt with. But there was one problem with it, and it dealt with the football area, and they wouldn't let the band on the field, wouldn't let us practice on the field. So we practiced on a parking lot right above the stadium, and I could have it till 8 o'clock, and then I had to drop the rope and let all the students park on it. And the problem with it was 15 yards narrower. It was 100 yards long, but it was 15 yards across, narrower than a regular field. So when you're running a 200-piece band, we would play the first 32 counts if we were coming across the field, stop, reset, and then come on across. That's how we had to practice. So I did everything I could to find a field to practice on. And I worked a deal, one of the strip malls that we could go out there at 6 in the morning and we laid down some kind of artificial lines and practiced. I got Lincoln University to let me come over on their field. The one that we really worked at, but it worked well for us, was Riverside Park. And the park board said, yeah, I could rehearse out there at 6 in the morning. Now, there's a reason why it's called Riverside. It was right on the river. So at 5 in the morning, we would be out there with our car headlights lining the field in a fog. It was a heavy fog out there. And then the band would show up. We'd rehearse and go at it wild open. Then I had to let them loose in time to get back to school and change, because a lot of times their shoes were muddy and all. But I did whatever I had to do to get my rehearsals in, and that I had 9 years of that. But,
You
But
mentioned
I love the city. I love the school. Mm-hmm.
you mentioned the football coach, and when I first came to Jeff City, I saw these bumper stickers everywhere. And it said, "I'm a band dandy." And I said to Tim, I said, "What in the world is a band dandy?" He said, "You got to ask Mr. Hoover." So tell us what a band dandy was, Mr. Hoover.
I hate to tear into somebody's character, but the football coach was a difficult person and not one that you could make friends with. And he had very derogatory remarks he made about the kids if they were in the band. And I usually have 5 or 6 kids out of the band that were on the football team, and I cut them a lot of slack, but they took it. They would get demeaned by him. And one of his put down phrases were, you're a goddamn band dandy, So one of the kids in the band got fed up with it, and he started selling that as a compliment. So he got all these bumper stickers made, and everybody was putting them on their cars. And I was following a car one day to this intersection. We had a red light, and I pulled up behind and had a bumper sticker. I'm a band dandy. It took me a minute to realize it was the football coach in his car, and the kids were putting them on his bumper sticker. It was great.
Oh man. Well, I was so impressed when I was a student teacher. And I'm impressed to this day that your students who started to play in the 7th grade could literally read anything that you put in front of them. And I mean, they were so solid in concert band and marching band and jazz band, and they were just really unbelievable ensembles. And I remember back then that you were doing playing assessments with the kids on a regular basis. This is way before the term assessment started to become in vogue. And we're talking 1976 now. And you used a plus, zero, minus system that I used throughout my teaching. How did you come up with that?
Well, refresh me on it, Charlie. Well, I was looking at your notes on that.
You had a clipboard, and the kids would write their names on the clipboard, and then there were 3 columns, and you'd had assigned a spot for them to play, and you listened to them play, and you gave them either a plus or a 0 or a minus. And the plus meant that they did a good job, and the 0 meant that they did okay, and the minus said that that they really need some improvement. And so you would go through and you would test these kids every week, and then you'd reseat the chairs. You remember doing that?
You know what? Kind of, yeah. The thrust of it was that, first of all, you need to move very quickly, starting them at 7th grade level. And I'd have guys say, well, I'm 2 years ahead of you. I start mine the 5th. And I said, by the end of the year, I'll catch you. And I felt we did. And we pushed real hard on tryouts all the time. And the kids would stand up and play, however it was, so that by the time they came out of beginning band, they were leather tough. You had them play something in front of the band, boom, they'd stand up and lay it on you. If it's something that had to be memorized, they'd memorize it. And it's the way that was the way we taught with it. And the kids didn't know any different. And I'll tell you something else, and this is sidetrack a little, but there's so many neat teaching techniques that are not being covered by the universities today, and that's another whole subject. But I found out early that you wanted to grab those parents. You didn't need them in the grade school or the junior high to raise money, but you needed them to be in your camp. And so by the time that I had those kids in beginning band, a week, 2 weeks?
Right.
By the time they could play 3 notes, I was ready for them to give a recital. And so we would rehearse it in class. Tonight, you're going to play a recital after dinner. And they would stand up at the dinner table before the dinner, and they'd say, I'd like to make an announcement. If you will please remain seated after dinner this evening, we have a guest artist that's going to perform for us, and I know you won't want to miss it. And that was what they do. They'd have their instrument out on the bed in the bedroom, ready to go, and they would excuse themselves at the close of dinner, go get their instrument, come back in, And then they would say, our artist this evening is Leslie Ann Scott. She's going to play a clarinet piece that I'm sure you will enjoy, entitled Skipping, or whatever it was. And they only need 2 or 3 notes, dee, da, dee, da, dee, da, 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 whatever it was. And those parents immediately got to hear that child that they just invested in an instrument, ready to perform. And those kids never were bashful about standing up and playing a solo for contest, playing an audition, playing a tryout for chair, because they didn't know any different. They started right in the beginning. And I figured I had those parents drawn in quick. And that's needed more today, Charlie, than back then, because now they're dealing with these traveling baseball teams in the summer, and they're dealing with soccer and all these things that are pulling at them. And I don't think, I'm not sure that band directors realize they can begin building this parental support and all at the very beginning stages. And you're teaching your students, how to perform, how to be comfortable with it, and baton conscious. I used to love, I don't know if we had anybody come in while you were student teaching, but I used to love having a guest show up, and I'd say, come over to my beginning clarinets today. Well, I don't want to interfere. Oh, no. I'd say, come with me. So I'd take them over, and I'd announce to the class, we have a guest today. Those kids immediately knew it was performance time. You could watch them slide to the front of their chair, get their feet planted on the floor, and they were ready for combat, because they knew I was going to make him conduct. And so I'm trying to think who it was. He was from Mizzou, and he come down, and he was on an evaluation team or something. And I loved him. I knew him from going to summer school. And I said, the kids would like for you to guest conduct today. And he'd say, oh, no. I said, oh, no, you have to guest conduct. And I said, feel free to ask for any kind of expression you want out of the piece. And it would be a little simple piece, but he could change tempo, ask volume changes or anything. And I remember he got halfway through this little piece, and he cut it off, and he says, this is unnatural. What's going on here? Because they're like, just try to trick us. This was a game with them, and they were ready to follow that baton no matter what it asked of them. So those things were, to me, they were fun, but they were good teaching techniques too. And I just walk around all the time thinking, I wonder if they're trying to do this with their band. I wonder if they've made contact with the parents. I wonder if they're teaching the child early on to be a soloist and be comfortable with auditions, And I don't know. I talk too much.
No, great stuff. And you're so right. I mean, we got to, I've said this on previous podcasts, and I say this quite a bit. Music is the only subject or thing that I can remember that you invest all this money in an instrument, and then, you rehearse for 6 months, and then you do a 20-minute concert. I said, imagine doing that with a soccer team. Okay, kids, we're going to rehearse every week, or we're going to rehearse 3 times a week for the next 6 weeks. And then we're going to have 1 4-minute soccer game.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing. So from Jeff City, you head off to New Mexico State. How did all that transpire?
Well, your mentor, Tim Lotzenheiser, had gone out there. And by then, we'd become very close friends at 27 miles from Columbia down to Jeff City.
Yep.
And so we kept that path hot back and forth. And so his second year there, they needed an assistant conductor, and he talked the department head into hiring me. And so I packed the family up, and we moved out there. And
how long were you at New
7
Mexico
years.
State? 7 years.
7 years. And really, Bay and I fell in love with it out there. The climate, the people, everything about it. We have very, very sensitive, loving thoughts with us to this day of those years in Las Cruces. And I didn't think I would leave. I figured I would retire there if if a couple of little things had been differently, I probably wouldn't have left there. But we loved it while we were out there. Mm-hmm.
And while you were there, the position at then it was Southwest Missouri State University, and Bob Scott, who became a dear friend of yours, was the department chair, and you end up as the director of bands at Springfield, or now it's called Missouri State University.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the things that, as you look back at your career there, and how many years did you spend at Southwest Missouri State or Missouri State?
31.
31. Man, that's a whole nother career. So what are some of the things that you think back about and give you the most pride in what you did during that time?
Well, we the SMS, and I don't mean this unkindly, but they'd never been known for their band program. And when I was at Jeff City, or when I was at Lebanon, and we'd go to those events in Springfield, you almost wanted to cry for the quality of the band there. It was just kind of sad. And so when Bob called me the first time, we were in Hawaii with the band. He called me at 3 a.m. He didn't know about the time difference. And he said, "I want you to come to Springfield." And I said, "No, I can't do that. I'm already committed for next year." And my deep down thought was, SMS didn't want a band. They had never had a good band. They never really invested in a band. And I didn't see where it could go, in a positive manner. And so he called me then again 2 years later, and he talked me into coming in for an interview. And he said, "You need to meet the president." And I thought, yeah, fat chance of that. Presidents don't interview band directors, And so Betty drove me to El Paso to fly out for the interview. And on the way over, she said, "You're not interested in this job, are you?" And I said, "No, I don't think I am." And she said, "Well, why are you letting them fly you in for an interview? That's not being honest." And I said, "Well, no. I've been as honest as I know how to be." And I said, "So they may get me in for the interview, and then they may decide, no, this isn't the guy we want. And that'll be the end of it." So anyway, I flew in, I did all the things you do. I rehearsed the ensemble. I met with their faculty committee. I did all those things. And then Bob Scott, who was the department head, said, "Come on, we're going over and meet the president." And I said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "Oh yeah." He said, he's got a hand in this. He wants a band program. And so we went over and met the president, and he was a very nice man. And he said, "I would like you to build a band here like you have in New Mexico State." And I thought he was jiving me. I said, "What do you know about my band in New Mexico State?" He said, "I've watched your films, I've listened to your recordings." And he just totally disarmed me. And I thought, I like this guy, So when I got home and Betty picked me up at the airport, I was telling her about it. And I said, "I don't know. It would be a challenge, but I with the backing of the department head, Bob Scott, and then this president, it might be possible, Anyway, I ended up taking it. And the thing I remember was they'd been carrying about 50 in the university band there. And that first year we got it up to 99. Now, I kept saying the marching 100. I lied about the 100 because we only had 99 in the band. And the old uniforms were something I didn't want to be a part of this new look at all. So we packed those away, and I ended up with white pants from Uniform Company and some pink shirts. And we got some straw hats, nice sporty looking straw hats from a hat company out of St. Joseph, Missouri. And we got out in the yard and spray painted them all white. And we got a new look going that first year. So that's what we built from.
You had an amazing number of students during your 31 years at Missouri State who are now band directors at all levels in Missouri and Kansas and the whole Midwest. Did you ever think you'd have that much impact on your students?
Charlie, I don't think you think about it when you're doing it. I used to tell my music ed class, I said, you won't realize this in the beginning, but I said, your students are going to remember you and they'll come back to you years later. And I said, how they remember you is probably up to you. But the fact that they'll remember you, you have no say over. They will remember you. And I don't know if I ever convinced them of that, but you find it out the longer you teach and the more they come back. And yeah, it's humbling. It's a very humbling experience. And just like on Memorial Day, St. Louis is full of our Missouri State grads up here. And I'll bet I heard from 20 different former students. They were all saying, I'm going to be playing taps at 10 a.m. on Memorial Day, And I thought, well, then I will too, on clarinet.
And you sounded great, by the way. You sent me the video. You sounded great. So, you gave your students at Missouri State a different experience than they would have gotten at other colleges and universities, and that's based upon your philosophy. So tell the listeners what kind of experience you wanted your kids to get when they were studying at Missouri State University.
Well, okay, and I share this with Bob over at University of Kansas. What's his last
Bob
name?
Foster. Bob Foster.
Bob Foster, yeah. And that was that a band is probably the most adaptable musical organization in existence. And I'd take on anybody in a debate on this because a band can go from a field show with 20, 40, 60, 80,000 people there, to the concert stage, to any setting. And so I would tell my kids early on, you will play for every possible imaginable setting. And if you ever have a problem with it, all you have to do is come talk to me. But you're going to play in churches. We played funerals. We played every type of occasion you could have. And you did it appropriately. I mean, I may have had 40-some drummers, but I wouldn't turn them loose in a church setting or anything. And so we would go out in Springfield, and I'd take my symphonic band, which usually numbered around 90, 95. That was our second concert group. And we would do services, 2 or 3 numbers at a church service. And you couldn't usually put them all down front in the sanctuary. So I would do it in the round. I'd have the woodwinds up the outside aisles. I'd have the trumpets in the balcony in the back. I'd have the low brass down front, and we'd do it in the round. And there are gorgeous arrangements of, you name it, anything. And I would tell the kids, I said, you have a musical instrument and you have an ensemble setting that you can literally reach inside people and touch their hearts. And I mean that from the bottom of my soul. And I used to prove it. I said, at the veterans concerts, you watch those veterans in the crowd, and there are going to be songs that are going to move them. And when we play those songs of the various branches and they stand up, I said, you're going to see tears in their eyes. And then I never felt like the concert was over. When the concert was over, I would parade the band out. They'd move out quickly and they'd set up a gauntlet. So as the crowd left, they went through this gauntlet of bandsmen standing there. Well, they loved it. They could talk to them. They could pat them. They could shake their hands. Kids would always come back in tears, at that contact with them. So we would play these church services. And now in retirement, I still get a note once in a while from different people in churches saying, oh, we always looked forward to the band coming out to our service, and so the last one we played, my last year there, we would finish up camp in August by taking the whole band to the University Heights Baptist Church, which was right across the street in campus, and they would always want a number. So I remember that last year, I said in one of the rehearsals that day, I said, all of last year's symphonic band see me after band, and there were about 70 of them, and I said, are you all still comfortable with Nearer My God to Thee? And they said, oh yeah. I said, then we're going to do that one at the church Sunday for University Heights. And so when it came time, they just quietly moved out, and we still did it in the round. I still had the trumpets in the balcony and the little brass down front. And it was gorgeous. It was gorgeous. And I thought, I'm in tears. And when I turned around, you could see all the different ones with their handkerchiefs and their Kleenex and all. And that's what I thought. With a band, you can touch people's hearts. And so there's not a setting that you cannot adapt a band to. And so consequently, when I took the band to London, I got permission to do a service in St. Paul's Cathedral. And I had to pull a lot of strings. Fortunately, I'd been doing a lot of judging work in London, knew a few people, and the idea of a 250-piece American marching band terrified them. Absolutely not, And I got permission. We couldn't get into practice, so I went in and found a pattern in the floor that we get set up under the rotunda, and that's what we did. I put my section leaders, and we set up in the round, and we played a gorgeous service. And one of the people that was sitting in that circle came out with tears in his eyes, and he said, I was doing pretty good until you played You'll Never Walk Alone. And he had recently lost his wife of 40 or 50 years. And so I pointed these things out to the kids so they would take everything they did with band seriously and realize the impact they had. And we had Jay Dawson with us on the trip, and he came down the length of St. Paul's on Amazing Grace with his bagpipes. and then we also did the same thing in the Crystal Cathedral in California. So I didn't find any place that couldn't be improved with the addition of a band. And my colleague that I worked with for so many years, King Schallenberger, and we were close as could be. And when he passed away, they asked if I would handle the music for the funeral. And I was telling Betty, I said, I'm not sure what way to go on this. And she said, well, are you going to play? I said, yes, but that's not enough. She said, march him into heaven. And so I had about 28 members on cue. They came down both aisles with When the Saints Go Marching In, and they played, and it seemed like a very fitting close to the occasion. And so you name me an event, and I'm going to convince you it'll be better if you had a band.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, you are one of those people. I mean, you're a great musician, and you do honestly believe that music touches hearts and souls, regardless of what it is. Whether it's a carnival or a funeral or a church service or a concert. I mean, you have that incredible ability. And you're one of the most creative people I've ever met, and you're a born showman. I think you could sell ice cream to Eskimos if you wanted to. And you promoted your band program more than anybody I've ever been around. You'd send out flyers and you'd create things. And, you talking earlier, you had that art training in your background, but you really use that to your advantage. So talk a little bit about your philosophy of promoting a band program.
Well, here again, I think a lot of directors miss this. It's very easy to get on the civic club circuit in whatever community you're in. Do up a little flyer and send to all of them and say, if you would like a speaker at one of your luncheons or whatever, I'm available. And we printed up, we had, you name an occasion, I had a handout for it. We had a CD of all the bands on it. And my little gal on staff, Amy, designed it like a patch pocket on a pair of jeans. And it said, a pocket full of musical numbers or something like that. And it was a sell on the band program. Well, when I go to speak at a civic club, I would take a box of those and put one at every place setting for everybody there. And it had a CD in it, and it had 2 or 3 very colorful little cards on the different ensembles in the department and the performance calendar for the spring. And so you were constantly promoting. Were you promoting to get audiences and backers of your program? Yes. Were you promoting to raise money? Yes. And the trick, 20 years at the public schools, I did every fundraiser you'd come up with, whether it was candy or pizzas or spaghetti dinners or spaghetti and jazz dinners, whatever. I did them all. But I found out at the college level, there are other ways to raise money too. And one was to draw the community in to where they were all invested in it. And so when you found big benefactors and organizations that would back you, then all you had to do was take care of them so that they knew they were being appreciated. And that $3 million band hall on the campus at Missouri State University was a gift. It was a gift. And I can walk you through exactly how it came about. And the first time that the band program made contact with the man who was going to build that building, because anybody need music for any event, we were there. I had groups for it. I had ensembles that would break down into smaller ensembles, and they knew they were on call for anything that would come along. And so within the Brass and Sass organization of about 24 members were all these other groups like the Trombone Kings and the Mafia 5 and the Polka Polka. Whatever you wanted, I had a group for it, and we could be there immediately. And so not only was it a good way to make contact and sell your program and keep in touch, but it was good for the kids to have all these opportunities to go out under any situation. And to me, it was a turn on. I'm the band director. What do you need? What do you need? We'll be there. And nobody had any more fun at it than I did, and I think the students did too. And so I found a whole new way to raise money, and we were getting endowments for the band program when I left Missouri State, and I knew every year that I had. I'll give you one quick example. We were needing a new battery for the marching band, and they take kind of a beating, and you need to replace them periodically. And so I had boosters who would introduce me to future boosters, and we went to lunch, and I met this couple, and they said, "What are you looking for?" I explained to them about a marching battery and the attack that it took, on the instruments, and they said, "Well, what's it going to take to replace them?" I said, $25,000, and we visited a while, and the gentleman grinned at me, and he says, and he patted his wife on the arm. He said, "I think the old gal will go with me on this." He says, "Get the drums ordered." All right, now that's the first step, right? You got a pair that are going to back the band. You've got your instruments you need. How do you follow up on it? When that equipment came in, the kids knew they were going to have to go perform with it. And I called out to the couple, and I said, "Would you like a concert on your lawn one evening this week? And we're going to show off the new drums to you." Well, they were excited. They notified the whole neighborhood, and the drum line went out there. They lined up out in the yard, and they played for them on their new equipment. And those people dearly loved those students. They had refreshments for them. They fixed cider and donuts, and everybody in the neighborhood was there. And that couple was there for life with us every year. They were big donors, and when they both passed away, they left an endowment for the program at the university. So you make friends. You reach out in the community, you let them know what you have. I think so often band directors, what's that saying? Don't hide your candle under a basket or something like that. Uh-huh. I think they they hide their candle under a basket. And I think missing out on opportunity is not the whole thing that gets hurt here. The students have an opportunity in a different setting and all to see what music and how powerful it is can do. And if they don't do those things, that's a facet those kids don't get to see or realize is there. And so
let's shift gears for just a second. So
okay.
At Missouri State, you worked with Dr. Belva Prather, who is an amazing teacher, and the two of you could not be more different from a personality standpoint. But the one thing you both had in common, the one thing you both had in common, I think, was your passion to educate students and to give them the finest experience possible. So talk about that relationship a little bit.
She came on as the flute instructor at the university, and I met her, and I thought, well, fine, whatever. And she came to me and she said, could you use any help with the marching band? I said, well, we always use help with it. And so she came out. And I don't think she had ever really dealt with a marching band or anything. I think she was fascinated by it. And so she started working with me, and we enjoyed working together. And I thought, here's a person I can learn a lot from. She's got qualities and strengths that I don't have. And I think probably she felt a little bit that way about me. And we were a good team. And we were, as you say, as different as day and night, still to this day. And but we still stay in close touch. And we had a lot of good years together. Yeah.
I remember getting a phone call from Gary Green, my good buddy, who was at the University of Miami, and he was conducting the Missouri All-State Band. And he heard the wind ensemble performance from Missouri State at the Missouri Music Educators Conference. And he said it was one of the finest performances he had heard in a long, long time. And Gary's not one guy to praise other performances because he's a great guy. He's very practical, very down to earth, but he has really incredible standards. And for him to offer that unsolicited comment and the platitudes that he shared, that was a pretty solid testimony to your work and to Belva's work and all that sort of stuff. So that's just really cool. So, Jerry, as you look at band programs in the country today, what are some of the strengths that you see?
I'm not sure what way to go with that. I try to keep up with what's going on, everything. And the most visible thing you see, of course, are the marching bands, and there's some extraordinarily good bands out there. I worry sometimes that are those programs one-dimensional, or do they really offer opportunities? When we were going at Missouri State, we had 20. So what was it? 18. I think we had 18 bands. We had 5 concert bands. We had the marching band. We had 5 jazz bands. And then we had our performance ensembles. And I'm not sure how much variety and development of all those kind of groups going on with today's bands. I don't know. I'm probably going to easily lose touch, but I worry first of all about that, and I worry about universities. I feel that probably shouldn't be offering a music ed degree in band because they don't have. It's like when I went to Drury in 1954 and came out of there with no experience in marching or jazz or, athletic bands or anything. And I had to learn them piece by piece, year by year. And a lot of schools are that way. Yeah. A lot of schools are that way, today.
So if you are a young director and you went to one of those schools and you needed to get experience in an area, if you needed to get experience in concert band or marching band or jazz band, what advice would you give them?
Well, you know why I went to the music conventions, Charlie? I went to them to find out where the hot band directors were, and then I would attach myself to them like a mosquito, right? And I would stay with them day and night. And if they thought they were going to bed at night, they were wrong, because I had a list of questions and I would keep them up as late as I could. And I felt like every time I went to something like that, it was an occasion for me to pick up some more ideas and tricks of the trade and philosophies and so I don't know. I think the problem is sometimes people think they know more than they know, and maybe and I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little too critical, but I feel like there's a lot more to offer out there, and I don't see a hunger to learn it from a lot of the areas out there, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, that's true, and you know, it's just. I love your analogy. I'd stick to them like a mosquito, because I think that's good. I think that is how you learn. I think you ask a lot of questions, and you know, and become as inquisitive as you can be, right?
Yeah.
Well, Jerry Hoover, that's always been one of the things that's always impressed me is you have this incredible sense of wonder about you and all the things you do. And, you know, between me and you, we could have a podcast that just goes on for, you know, about 12 hours and we wouldn't still cover everything that we've shared together.
Oh, but I'd love it. I'd love it.
Well, then we'll do this again. Is it okay? Is that a promise?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll have Jerry Hoover.
Yeah. Let's see.
We'll do Jerry Hoover part 2.
Pages here didn't get to. Okay.
Okay, we'll do this. We're gonna do Jerry Hoover part 2 in about a month or so. How's that?
Okay. All right.
Okay. Give Betty a big hug. God bless you. Thanks for being an inspiration, man. You are a beacon of light to all of us. Jerry Hoover. He is a 1 in a million. I just love his energy, his creativity, and the ideas he has. He is just simply amazing. I don't know anybody like him. And if that conversation doesn't want to make you go out and be a band director, I'm not sure what will. We're going to have another conversation with Jerry Hoover coming up in a few weeks. I promise you that. And until then, that's Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. Next week, we'll have a visit with Stan Schoonover, retired supervisor of music in Fairfax County, Virginia, and director of the Fairfax County Winds. So that's Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. If you would like to send a question to Charlie or have a comment, please send an email to bandtalkcharlie@gmail.com. We hope you will let your colleagues, students, and friends know about Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to being with you again soon.